Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Okay.
My name is Diana Martin. I'm the executive director here at Hourglass, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first Friday Forum today. This is a really important topic. We're here to talk about homelessness in our community. We're joined by several experts who are going to give us kind of the state of homelessness in Lancaster County today and talk about some of the trends that they're seeing, root causes, but also the services that are available and some of the bright spots that we're looking forward to in the future, including a new Homelessness Services Hub that's going to open right here in Lancaster City in 2025. So really glad to be joined by our panel of experts today. You might recognize a few of their faces. Justin Eby is here, who is the executive director of the county's Housing and Redevelopment Authorities. Deb Jones, who's the director of Human Services. And we're also joined today by Mandy Mastros, who's part of the Homelessness Street Outreach team. So after their presentation, we're going to have time for questions and thoughts from all of you. So thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, and I'm going to hand it off because I heard that we have a lot to cover in today's presentation, and we want to make sure we have time for questions. I'd like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers and Associates, for making the forums possible, the Ware Center for hosting us, and also Shoemaker, who provides our live streaming services. And I know we have a number of folks who are watching us online today, so thanks for joining. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to our presenters and really eager to hear more. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Diana. My name is Deb Jones, and we are so glad to be here with you today. I thought I would just take a moment to share a little bit about what our next 57 minutes are going to look like. We want to be able to talk a little bit about affordable housing and the need for affordable housing, create a clear picture, whatever the best we can in a short period of time, and then move into this issue related to homelessness in a local level and talk about some services, and then hear from Mandy Mastros as a street outreach worker. And then we're going to pivot to the future of some projects that we are currently working on that will continue to address homelessness. And of course, we need to have a call to action for all of you, as well as some time for Q&A. So we will be moving quickly. We have a lot of content. And for some of you in the room that we have been walking this journey together, you know that we could talk for hours about what's being done and what needs to be done and making data-driven decisions. And so with that, we're going to start off with the affordable housing.
Okay. Yep.
Trust me, we have a lot of great slides. Next slide, please. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We really appreciate taking the time to be able to kind of educate, set a baseline of where we are with our housing needs and our homelessness needs here in Lancaster County. This is a county problem. This is a state problem. This is a national problem. But we have the tools and resources and the collaboration here in Lancaster County to move the needle forward to address these issues. And so we're really excited to talk to you this afternoon about this. Next slide. Just kind of want to set the baseline. When we talk about affordable housing, there's a lot of different definitions. Affordable housing, it's affordable to individual or household. For our office, we use the HUD definition of affordable housing. We look at fair market rents. We look at incomes 80% or lower median in income. And a lot of our tools, resources, and opportunities are to address populations at 50% or less area median income. We try to look at housing choice. Not every individual or household has the means to afford a 1 or 2 or 3 bedroom household. And so we definitely need to be looking here in the community at what type of creative housing solutions we can develop. When you just look at the area median income of 50 and 30%, We definitely have an inventory need. This is no different than at a state or federal level. We do have units that are coming online. We indicate about 322 here in 2024, but that definitely does not continue to meet the need of rents or home ownership at an affordable level. PHFA, Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency, continues to release data for statewide issues. Lancaster County estimated that 84% of our renters pay 30 or more percent of their income. Try to keep the 30% level so the other expenses are met and they are not what we call a house burden. We're only second in PA to Delaware County with how many residents we have that are cost burden. And that doesn't necessarily just mean 80% area median income. That could mean someone who's making 100, 120% median income. They are still paying more for their housing needs. Next slide. I kind of want to give you a brief overview example of just all the great work that's happening in the county. This is a cross collaboration between county, city, and other municipalities. Have not seen this many projects at once in our county moving forward. This gives you a great snapshot. It's not all the projects that are addressing some of the affordable housing needs, but there are definitely projects that we are involved with. Anywhere from projects looking to get tax credits to move forward, projects that are looking for their last $500,000 million to move forward. A lot of these projects are addressing homelessness. There's been a real shift with funding coming from the federal government, both the ARPA funding and HUD funding, to align projects with homelessness, other special populations, domestic violence, human trafficking. And a lot of the projects you see on the screen do have an element of homelessness, whether set-aside units or specific units for folks that are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And so I wanted to paint the picture that we do have a lot going on, but as you'll see, there are a lot of different factors that influence homelessness, and we can't really talk about homelessness unless we talk about what our current housing needs are. Next slide. Again, just wanted to provide a snapshot. This is not just in the city. We are working, this is a snapshot, a heat map of the projects that our office has done over the years, including home repairs, households that have a municipal mandated sewer line or street or sidewalk improvement. It includes blight acquisition. There's a lot of tools in our toolbox and that the county can utilize to try to move some of these projects towards affordable home ownership and affordable rental opportunities as well. Just to conclude with the landscape, I think, again, looking at the various projects that are online, there will be a continued need. A lot of these projects are moving forward because there's been a big influence of federal funding coming into the county. When that federal funding goes away, we're going to continue needing to look at creative means to help support construction of affordable housing. These projects, 10 years ago, we get the same HUD allocation as we do today. I see a couple of developers here. I do know, construction costs moving forward, we have to continue looking at creative ways to bridge the gap between what you can build and afford and set the rents at compared to other housing opportunities for individuals that may not be able to afford that. Thank you.
It's just one. Okay. As Justin mentioned, the need for affordable housing here in Lancaster County is an additional 10,380 units. Just let that sink in for a minute. We also know we have needs related to homelessness that are directly related to housing. So just ponder this for just a few seconds. What does the typical person who is unsheltered look like here in Lancaster? Is it the unkept person sleeping under a blanket in the business entranceway? Is it the person carrying a backpack and another bag walking down the street? Could it be the person who's working full-time, third shift, and saving money for first month's rent and security deposit? Or could it be that person more seasoned in their years, elderly, on SSDI collecting $800 a month, who now has a non-renewal of their lease because the property owner is selling the building? I want to dispel any myth. There is no typical person or situation around being unsheltered. And today we were asked to come here to address our current needs and to talk a little bit about the state of those that are living unsheltered and the services that are here. There are a multitude of reasons why someone experiences homelessness. Notice I used the phrase experience homelessness. They're not to be identified as homeless individuals. They're going through an experience. And I want to say that the social service partners here in Lancaster County understand that. And they see their clients in a way that the clients cannot see themselves. And that's how they continue to press on in light of some numbers that are devastating. So every year, we release what's called the point-in-time count. I do have a number of flyers up here, if you'd like to take one. Too hard to put the whole thing in one particular slide. So I took parts of this I want to talk about. We're congressionally mandated annually to have a date in January where we go into the field, into the community, and we count the number of individuals that are experiencing homelessness, living in a place not meant for human habitation. At the same time, we are also counting the number of individuals in one of our emergency shelter programs or in one of our housing programs. And we report that information. We report that information to Hub just like every other agency around the nation does. But these numbers are important to us. They help to tell us trends so we can make data-driven decisions. And so for 2024, we saw at the top left, we saw that there were 597 individuals in Lancaster County experiencing homelessness. That's a 13.5% increase. Now last year, the nationwide increase was 12%. We're waiting to see what the nation average is for this year, for 2024. We also see, if you look down to the next set down below, is that the unsheltered count was 122 this year, as opposed to 107 last year. And we indicate some of the areas. Now, we know these areas of count because we had 69 volunteers and professionals in the field leading 23 survey teams to be able to see out in the community how many individuals there are. But it was only on January 24th, 2024. This is just a snapshot of one day. We also know it's really important to see how many individuals are in the sheltered count, and you'll see that in that arch-like graph. In the emergency shelter, 63%, and in our transitional housing programs of 37%. And then an age breakdown of individuals. You can see too this, we have trends that are listed down at the bottom, and we use all this information to make some data-driven decisions. More people in emergency shelter, 20% more in one of our housing programs, 14% more that are unsheltered this year, and 8% more that are 65 and older. We have spreadsheets of data that collect information that tell us about gender, ethnicity, and the household type, and the list goes on and on. But what I want to bring your attention to right here is the bottom chart. This happens to be about the point-in-time count. But again, I said we were going to go through this quickly. The bottom chart there, as you'll see, is last year's numbers compared to this year's numbers. So the first to your left at the bottom is that the emergency shelter programs, we saw a 10% increase in emergency shelter. Some of you know that between December 22nd and the end of March of this year, we were able to have 40 additional beds here in Lancaster City, ran by the Lancaster County Food Hub, to get through the winter months, to be able to see, and that's one of the reasons why the 10% increase happened there. We had more beds to meet the needs. Also, the next column is the housing programs, and you can see that's a 19.5% increase. Again, the need to have more housing and more supportive housing within our system is important. And then finally, we have the unsheltered. And as I mentioned, that is a 14% increase this year. So in every single program that's part of this point in time count, you can see a significant increase of need. Well, let's look at the overall big picture, the landscape. So as I mentioned before, we report this information, and this information helps us to make decisions. And you can see to the far right, we have in this point in time graphic that goes from 2009 to 2024, we have our total count of 597 individuals. We have surpassed that 2012 number. And there is a lot of information about this graph, as well as landscape issues, situational issues, and housing market issues that impacts this grant, as well as a number of other variables also. That's for another time. We can talk about that. But here's the imperative situation our community is in. First of all, the housing market conditions. In Lancaster County, you have to have a wage of $24.73 per hour to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. Justin said about cost burdened, which is paying more than 30% of your income towards housing. He said that 84% pay more here in Lancaster County. 84% of the renters pay more for their income, more than 30%. We also see a non-renewal releases. Due to the sales of houses, upgrades, and renovations, there's more opportunity because of the demand, right, to have a higher rent, which then precludes a number or most of the people that our services are working with. We are also seeing escalated mental health conditions among those that are unsheltered, substance abuse disorder, and trauma among the unsheltered. But what we also need to point out is the toll on people who are living unsheltered. I think sometimes we might not realize that they are 3 to 4 times more likely to die early, prematurely. There's research that supports that the likelihood of dying as early as 48 and into your 50s. Also, the medical needs. 2 times more likely to have a heart attack and stroke, which, might I say, puts a huge impact on our health system. The exasperated mental health, being forced to move, stress, and persistent poverty. And research shows that among those that are unsheltered that prematurely pass, it's for entirely treatable conditions. Then you have the public health concerns. Increased numbers are living in public spaces. We see it, don't we? And unsanitary conditions persist. Couple that with also a low barrier shelter that's going to be closing here at the end of this month of 40 beds. And that shelter was able to start with COVID funds and remain through, but it is now closing at the end of this month. The homelessness response system, that's what we call it, it's the Lancaster County Homelessness Coalition, is underfunded, and it lacks the necessary resources in order to meet the increasing needs. So how are we meeting those needs? What are we doing as Lancaster County providers to be able to help people move forward? We have an array of services, not enough services and not enough funding, but there are services tailored to meet the needs of individuals who are living in places not meant for human habitation. That's a HUD definition. These services that we have in this whole continuum are not for those that are doubled up or couch surfing, you might say, because our services have to be geared to those that are the most acute clients and needs, because we have a scarcity of resources. And among us and online, there are providers who are working in homelessness and addressing needs day in and day out in the midst of probably the most difficult times. Even more difficult after the COVID funds, relief funds, are now all been dispersed. And yet, they show up. They show up with coordinated entry. They show up in street outreach, the street medicine team, the mobile hygiene unit called Refresh Lancaster, our emergency shelters, the winter shelters, our extreme weather shelters, and the day centers. The array of housing programs that we have here in Lancaster County to meet needs. And then some prevention, just a little bit of prevention money we have, be able to keep people in their homes. Then we think outside the box. We base our information on data and what other communities are doing, and we see opportunities. And last year, we spurred on a housing initiative to house individuals. And then the city also, kudos to them for the Portland Loo, the restrooms that are available over at Prince and Chestnut. An array of services. Can't keep up with the need, though, but a lot of framework and a foundation that is strong and overseen by our office. Partners, these partners that are working day in and day out. Today, we're pleased that you get firsthand knowledge of what is seen out in the community, specifically here in Lancaster City, by Mandy. She is going to tell you what it is like and what she sees as a street outreach worker. So, Mandy, thanks for being here. I'll let you take it from here.
Good
afternoon. I am the pastor at the Moravian Center of Lancaster, which is right above the bus station. I'm also the chaplain for our Adult Day Center. I'm a doctoral student at Lancaster Theological Seminary with a focus on the inclusion of individuals with lived experience of homelessness in the decision-making processes that impact them. And I'm a Lancaster City resident who has lived in Lancaster County my whole life. And I share all of that with you because every one of those roles impact the remarks or shape the remarks that I'm going to share. Mostly today, though, I'm speaking as the perspective of an outreach worker, a licensed social worker working in the city of Lancaster with unhoused individuals. I've been asked to share some information from a boots-on-the-ground perspective, to share what I'm seeing and I'm hearing, and it's my passion to bring to you the perspectives and the voices of those that I work with. I'm only going to limit my remarks to one facet of all that I see because of our time restraints today, but I certainly am more than willing to engage at another time on any area of what I'm seeing and experiencing. So today I'm going to kind of tailor my remarks to the experiences surrounding the Binns Park and Ewell Plaza area, because what I have seen and what I have experienced there is truly a microcosm of what is happening in other places in the city, in other places in the county, and in places across the country. The first question, and Deb spoke about this in her remarks, are who are the homeless? We typically kind of lump them into one group. This is what people experiencing homelessness have in common. This is who they are. And we do a disservice to those individuals, and we cannot adequately serve those individuals when we do lump them together in that way. Because there's not one uniform group of people that define those experiencing homelessness. There's a diversity of age, education, work experience and history, race, ethnicity, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Many of these individuals, for a host of reasons, may be unlikely to use congregant shelter beds even when they are available. And Deb shared that many of those beds will be going away later this month. And for those of us in this room, we may have a hard time wrapping our brains around what that would be like, why you might choose, and that's a loaded word, why you might choose to sleep outside an organized camping experience. We might wonder why that would be a choice someone would make. So my experiences have included working alongside individuals who experience mental health concerns that include a deep fear or mistrust of people in indoor spaces. Individuals who are actively addicted to substances that either cannot or will not refrain from using during overnight hours, which is a requirement for entering even a low barrier shelter. And some might make the mistake of dividing this into two groups of people, those who cannot and those who will not. In my experience, that question is impossible to parse out and often not helpful to the conversation. So we could stop there because that's where most people stop. The stigma is that individuals who are homeless are either mentally ill or they're addicted to substances. And I will tell you that that is just a small portion of the individuals that I work with. Other people who may refrain from using services, including shelter, may refrain because to receive services, you must provide your name and your birth date and permission for your information to be recorded into the system. And for some, this is a problem for them for many different reasons, a distrust of the system due to traumatic experiences, mental health issues, or simply a desire to maintain their own privacy, which as a social worker is my responsibility to respect that right. There are folks who, for a variety of reasons, would prefer to sleep outside over a congregant setting. Maybe because they can't sleep in a room filled with other people. Maybe because the hygiene or lack thereof of other individuals make it hard for them to be in that space. Perhaps they are avoiding drugs and alcohol or the smells associated with them, or conflicts with others who are in shelter. Maybe they don't want to or are unable to navigate the difficult transition between inside and outside with their belongings every morning and every evening, because many of the folks that we are working with have to navigate getting to and from appointments, to and from employment, need to find a place to be where they are not often allowed to be in most settings during the day with everything that they own with them. Sometimes folks just enjoy being outside. And perhaps individuals are unwilling to be separated from a spouse, a partner, or a pet. With each of these individuals, or each of these groups of individuals, as an outreach worker, my response to be therapeutic and trauma-informed varies. But there is one constant. And that is the need to build a rapport and a relationship with each individual, because there will be no services, there will be no anything unless that relationship is developed first. And it takes time. For individuals who have experienced significant trauma or are experiencing all of the transitions associated with being homeless, this relationship building can take a week, a month, a year, even a decade. And those relationships are easily broken by sometimes the smallest things, often not by anything that the outreach worker or by the individual themselves had any control over. And that stalling of that process of relationship sometimes breaks it to the point of being impossible to rebuild or of completely starting over. So one question that I'm often asked is, why do people continue to gather in places like Binns Park, Ewell Plaza, and Culleton Park, other places that are congregant settings like that outside? Why do folks continue to gather in those places even though they run the risk of being fined, they run the risk of being told that they need to move, with all of the issues associated with that? And here's some of the reasons that I have found along the way. I'm going to speak again specifically of Binns Park and Ewell, but recognize that many of these factors are true in other places. It's well lit. There's proximity to the police station. There's cameras. There is an overhang or protection from the elements. Protection from the view of the street. There's a hedgerow that also allows people a sense of privacy and security to leave their belongings if they just need to go to an appointment, to use a bathroom, or go to a community meal, because you're likely not going to get the job if you walk into the job interview carrying 5 bags of things with you because you have to take everything with you. There's proximity to the bus station, proximity to the community meals, to the day centers and other social services. It's a known location for outreach workers, mental health professionals, street doctors, and other services for folks to find individuals when they are looking for them to provide services. There's a familiarity with the surroundings. When we are in our homes, we know how to navigate from one room to the other, from one need to the other, from one place to the other. This is the same from being able to return to a same space. And it is large enough for people to gather together with enough distance to feel safe, but also to be in community with individuals that have become their family, their community. My boyfriend and I were walking one day to go to a show at the Fulton, and on the way back, I started chatting with some of the folks that I work with. And as we walked away, Josh remarked to me, he said, it felt like we were invited into their living room. And in some ways, we were. It's a community of people that they can trust in a world where many feel that there are so few that they can trust. So often our conversations around homelessness revolve around safety. And for the most part, for most of us in the room, that conversation revolves around the safety of people who are not homeless. And I understand that and respect that, and those are conversations that need to be had. But I will share with you that the primary reason why there are large congregations of unhoused individuals gathering together is because of their perception of safety. This is the main reason why folks gather in congregant settings like this, is because there is a level of safety for them. I will tell you, as an outreach worker who has a level of street cred, I certainly feel safe walking around in those environments. And yet, I recognize that the gatherings of individuals at Binns and Ewell and other locations is quite problematic. And it presents challenges that must be addressed from health and security and safety perspectives. And I don't think that there is anyone in this room who is okay with the situation as it is. I think we could all recognize that there is a need for things to happen, for things to change. And I firmly believe that unless we can create and provide other environments that allow these individuals to feel as safe as they do in places like Binns Park and Ewell Plaza, they're going to continue to return, even when faced with citations, fines, and arrests, because they don't know where else to go. And when they ask the question of where else they can go, I don't have answers to give them. I also believe that if we are going to address the issue of homelessness, the approach needs to be two-pronged. It needs to be the developing of trusting and maintaining meaningful relationships with those experiencing homelessness, alongside the increased presence of truly affordable housing options. And these together are the only ways that I believe we will address the issues of homelessness in our community. Thank you.
In 2022, Greg Colburn and Clayton Aldern produced a book, authored a book. Homelessness is a housing problem. The book is filled with data and indicators that point to the needs of communities to address housing. Every single program that was up on that slide talks about housing. Housing that is needed for each individual, for, as Mandy said, a group of individuals. The system does not have the housing or the programs that's needed. And so there are times that we have to pivot. We have to be flexible. We have to be adaptable. We have to, and we continue to learn by other communities all across the United States. And we had to do such a thing recently. And we developed a city-focused expanded street outreach based on best practices because of a lack of shelter, a lack of emergency shelter. This is a best practice by leaders in the field. It's been used in the communities, and we have seen it as well, that street outreach, the importance, getting and working with individuals and getting them into shelter and then also into housing. So with the efforts of Mayor Sirachi and Lancaster County Community Foundation to raise funds so that we could add one full-time addiction recovery specialist to our outreach team, as well as 2 part-time outreach staff to work in evenings and weekends here in Lancaster City, to increase the efforts, as well as the intent to increase the client financial assistance to be able to pay for first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposits. And in some cases, it's 3 times the rent as a security deposit. So that is one initiative that started this week, and we are delighted to be overseeing and collaborating with this expansion as a best practice because we do not have those additional shelter beds. And we have 2 other projects that we want to share with you about.
So as it was mentioned previously in this presentation, the low barrier shelter in the city is closing at the end of this month. For the past 18 months or more, our team, along with other partners, have been looking, and even individuals in this room, looking at opportunities within the city of Lancaster to have a permanent low barrier shelter. While you've heard, some of the best practices as well as permanent supportive housing, other transitional housing, we also need a low barrier shelter in the city to address the increasing unsheltered count that we continue to experience year over year. And so with the efforts, we found a partnership with Otterbein United Methodist Church at Clay and Queen Street. We have designed a space that could go up to 80 beds, both men's and women's, restrooms, showers, ADA accessibility. The purpose, again, to have a safe place to sleep at night. It will not include other services, which we'll talk about it with another project. But the idea is to have a safe place for folks to stay overnight and continue to go to the community meals, get engaged with outreach, and continue the progression towards permanent supportive housing. We are also excited to create a partnership with the YMCA. They have done a lot of great work in York County as far as addressing homelessness and working with homeless individuals in York County, and we're excited to create a partnership and develop a plan moving forward with the Y. We are still on target to open for winter months in December, and we expect to have construction started here in the next month. So again, very excited that we actually have a permanent location in the city moving forward. Additionally, another project that we've been working on for about 18 months as well is the Prince Street Community Hub. Understanding that homelessness is complex, you also need to have opportunities and long-term solutions that address the complexities of housing and homelessness. This project will do that. This is the current state of the property at 134 South Prince Street, the old Neighborhood Services building. This we expect to open sometime in winter of 2025. Again, complexities of housing and homelessness, this facility will, an opportunity presents the ability to connect individuals through a day center, have lockers to store items, to take a shower, to meet with workforce development, to meet with street medicine, to do their laundry, to work on a computer. And so we're really excited. This is a best practice. This scale changes where you are in the country, but again, this is a best practice to have these solutions in one place instead of having someone go from one place to the next to really address their needs. We're also looking at crisis housing units. You have a family or individual. It could be someone that gets evicted. It could be a fire. It could be a whole number of reasons doubled up. They can't live with their family anymore. The crisis units, again, another best example of housing choice, housing opportunity, creative solutions. Code Blue, Code Red shelter space. I'm sure over the last couple of years, when it gets really, really cold, you've seen notifications about Code Blue. That's our attempt throughout the county to get individuals inside during elements that could be a really harm risk to their health and their well-being. Again, we'll also have space for partners or develop other partnerships, again, to bring the services to the individuals that need them. We're really excited for this project. Another example of county and city collaboration, of the ARPA funds, of the support from some of the foundations that are even in this room today. And we'll continue to look to fund this project and the Otterbein project, hopefully with your support as well, having that public-private nonprofit opportunity.
Well, now we have the call to action. There's so much that you've heard today and opportunities, and we just wanted to kind of flesh out a couple for you. Being educated around homelessness and the causes of homelessness and the factors related to why someone would be unsheltered are extremely important. And then likewise, we shared about local services. We only scratched the surface. We have so much more we could share about the work that is being done. And so to become educated about that is important. Second is also to be able to see individuals. They're in situations that are difficult. If we could even think about a difficult time in our life, what that was like, certainly did not define who we are. And so being able to have compassion and empathy. The third is meet with our office. We have a lot of ideas for a deeper collaboration of how we can engage with businesses, municipalities, community members, and so much more. Fourth, advocate for affordable housing and a livable wage. Share the impact of housing here in the county today. You can see how much we need an increase in our wage. Next is financially support a local homelessness provider here in our community. If you are a provider of homelessness, could you raise your hand? We have a couple here, right? So being able to support their efforts in what they're doing. Next, invest in our projects that we have that Justin just shared. We left out a couple numbers, like $10 million needed for bricks and mortar, and operational budgets of like 1.2 million for the shelter. There are opportunities to be able to make a difference. And then last, share this information in your sphere of influence. It's going to take a whole community to be able to make an impact. And so you chose to be here today, and you chose to be able to learn more, and we are available to be help to guide along the way of how you can be a part of the solution. So Diana, I think we actually have time for a Q&A. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Let me grab a microphone here where they're going to take a seat here, and maybe I'll even take another one of these if you guys can share 2 mics. I'm going to recruit one of my board members, Brian Davison, to help me out with the Q&A. So please raise your hand if you have a question or some comments or thoughts for our speakers. Eager to hear from you all today. Let's see. I'll start with one right here.
So I had a question about extrapolation from a point in time. It would seem to me that if your count is in January, you're looking at the nadir of the problem. Is there any feeling about what that expands to when the weather's warmer? It must be greater.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, probably don't need. I don't need a microphone, probably. We, across the nation, the continuum of cares had a point-in-time count twice a year, and some of us might remember that. One was held in January, one was in July. July was much more convenient to be out in the parks and looking for individuals than it was in January. Right? We know that the point-in-time count is underrepresented. That is 597 people on that one day, right? And so we have data that we use in our countywide case management system called Empower Lancaster, and the data that would best compare with what January would look like to July would be those that are enrolled in touch points with street outreach and those that are in the shelter during that time, and we would compare that information. We do not do that on a consistent basis because that's not helpful to us. What's helpful to us is real-time need and being able to address those real-time needs in our asks, in our presentations, and our seeking for grants, and in our project building.
Must have seasonal variation in your demand. And if you're gearing up to meet them, that must be an important thing.
We create emergency shelters that are winter-based because the demand is an uptick during the winter and because of the weather itself. The study in the Colburn book shows that regional indicators are not the main precipitous for the need for homelessness increase. I'm not quite sure how to address the question right now, but we base all of our data and monthly data based at and evaluate that to look at the needs, right? So the presumption is that during the winter months that you would come into shelter and that the need might be lower than it is over the summer months. Is that what I'm...
Well, I don't know what the pattern is because you apparently don't have the data on a seasonal basis.
What?
For instance, if you're hiring people for a certain task, you might have seasonal labor requirements rather than hiring someone for an annual requirement, like you would if you had an orchard.
So I'm following you a little bit more, but I will say that we don't look at seasonal. No. Yeah. No. I would render to say that that is not one of our typical data points. but we would have the data to show that individuals enrolled at different times, and we could see that. But I don't believe that would get us to the best use of our time and efforts for seasonal. Yeah, other than having a winter shelter. That's really important.
No.
I want to thank Mandy. You mentioned about building relationships, and I love that. And I just have a curiosity question. I know for me, I've encountered like several single women sleeping in our park, and they tell me, hey, I feel safe here. I'm by myself. I'm a female. And it seems like several people have been fined for sleeping in the park. And I guess I'm just trying to find answers, like, why does that happen? Have you encountered that? And how are these people expected to pay a fine if they have nothing? And then they sit in jail with a fine. I have experienced that with many of the individuals that I have worked with. And I do know that there have been ongoing conversations regarding where individuals can go and be safe. And I also know that there have been conversations about the enforcement of the statutes that say that you may not be in the park after dark or from 10 to 6. I think it's from 10 to 6. There are a lot of conversations that have happened about that, and I don't know that I'm the right person to comment on the specifics of how or why or when of that, but I do know that that has been the experience that I have had with many of the folks that I have worked with as well, yes.
Binns Park and Ewing Plaza are the visual epicenter of homelessness in Lancaster. What programs are you designed to specifically address that area?
Some of the programs that have been in effect to specifically address that area has been 2 day centers that have been run by Anchor Lancaster and also by the Lancaster County Food Hub. Currently, the initiative I was talking about with the additional city-focused street outreach, meaning enhancing our existing street outreach team that serves the county with an additional supports to be able to serve individuals in the city, is an attempt to also engage. The challenges that we're seeing is that the system does not have the capacity to meet the needs, such as the individuals that was just mentioned living in the park or residing in the park. They do not have a shelter bed that will be available here on July 1st. They do not have housing. Programs are saturated at their current state, and the system needs to be expanded to be able to keep up with the additional needs.
Yeah.
This would only address a portion of the problem, and I recognize that. But in the past, there were things like when the government brought in a lot of West Virginia workers for World War II, they built single rooms with sinks, and there were bathrooms down the hall. And that housed many people, and subsequently it housed many people who were released from Washington, D.C.'s mental hospital when they closed those. And we have a lot of housing here in Lancaster that seems to be too big for the people who live there. And it seems to me that the whole idea of boarding houses is something that could be usefully done, but I don't hear that ever talked about.
I would just add that, like the Prince Street Hub is an example of moving in that direction a little bit. There's 22 supportive housing units. They're very smaller scale. They have some shared restrooms and other means. I think it'll take a few more projects like that, a few more developers willing, to find the land, to work through the zoning, and to develop properties like that. But we do have some projects in the pipeline, or again, like Deb said, we have a lot of ideas. Come meet with us, and we can work with you on a project.
And we will add too that there are shared living buildings available that have been utilized by our service providers. We need an expansion of those, and we also need to have some discussions with municipalities to expand some maybe zoning and other ordinances to be able to help meet some of the needs.
If I'm old enough,
They'll turn it on for you. You're good. Just talk.
is it talk now?
Yep.
Back in the days when we had the draft, I just remember, so you're a young male, 21 years old, and you have to go in the service. So I'm in the Navy, I go up to Newport, and you're assigned to World War II barracks, right? Whole platoon, 60 people, double beds, bathrooms at the end, and that's how we were housed. And then you had a central place for eating, and you were under discipline, right? So there's a way, and these are all, wooden, very inexpensive, and they could be built very quickly. You have a man over there who could probably get them built in 2 weeks if he put his mind to it. But the other thing is, well, I have two questions. One is, if you've never heard about Ellie Goldratt and his question of how to get to root causes, because I haven't heard anything about root cause of all this. But my question is, what does success look like in 5 years? What's it going to look like? Say, oh, we were successful. Whatever we did, it's worked beautifully. How would that look? And one more idea that people aren't going to like is, you're going to have an empty jail in 3 years or 5 years. And could that be repurposed for holding? Because you're trying to hold people till you get them back into whatever the program is. That's enough.
Hey. So you remember the graph that I showed from 2009 to 2024. Success will look like that huge dip that went down, right? For the point in time count. Success will look like working with individuals and being able to meet their housing needs in a way that best suits them. It may not look like a one room. It may look like a congregate living, with several people living together. It may look like you need intensive case management support, or maybe you don't need that at all. But to be able to walk alongside and to be able to have that solution that's needed so that we will see a community that has individuals that are being housed, which will make our community even stronger. And so that's success. That will be success. And so to be able to envision buildings that could become not just shelters, emergency shelters, but actually created to be housing, right? So we say that across the country, motels that are no longer being used, that are renovated to be housing. We see that also in churches as well, throughout the nation. So many best practices that are happening, so many opportunities for Lancaster. We need to continue to be thinking outside the box.
I saw the mayor's hand up. Maybe we can take one last comment over there before we have to wrap for today, or question.
Yes, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the work that you all do. I would just say that, our police bureau exercises extreme discretion in recognizing the need and recognizing that homelessness is not an offense for which someone should be incarcerated. And at the same time, there are real public safety concerns and issues that even the homeless themselves have pointed out to us in terms of drug dealing and other things that are happening. And we will continue to enforce the law as it relates to those issues. And so I would just continue to recognize the tension that exists in our community between the number of people that are rough sleeping and unhoused and who are receiving services and some of the other issues that are happening. I'll also just say that, our ability to work collaboratively is predicated on the development and expansion of services in the city and the county. We had the data that you shared from the folks that were in shelter was very revealing. 88% of those folks were from Lancaster County. There's a lot of othering that's going on about those are people coming from other places. They're not. And I think the more that we can lean into that and understand that these are issues in Columbia and Ephrata and Quarryville and other places where people are sleeping in cars, you might not see them on the streets, but it exists throughout our county.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't know if you have a response to that. If not, it looks like we are at time. So let's give a round of applause for our speakers. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. You see the call to actions. We also have a video recording of today's talk, so please share that with folks in the community. One quick announcement before you head off and enjoy your weekend. We will not have a First Friday Forum in July. We always take off July so that you can spend Independence Day weekend with your families, maybe at a beach somewhere. So we'll be back here Friday, August 2nd, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Thanks. Have a great weekend.